Today we are going to discuss one of the very significant article written by Dr B R Ambedkar, and let me give you this introduction about this article, where you can find this article, which is always available on Google anytime. It is available in soft copy PDF. You can find it there. You can find it in a volume which is being written by Ambedkar, that is volume 17 part 2. 17 part 2, and in this 17 part 2, the page number I would like to suggest you, that is page number 109. Here you can find out rise and fall of the Hindu woman, who was responsible for it. Otherwise, is simply, even if you simply type rise and fall of Hindu woman, PDF by Dr B R Ambedkar, you can find it simple, this article, on Google also. So from this page number 109 to this goes around 129. So 109 to 29, it means 20-page article is there, and we are going to discuss this article today. I will just give you what is there in this article, what is there in this 20-page article, which is written by B R Ambedkar. And again I remind you, this volume number 17, this volume 17 part 2, writings and speeches of Dr B R Ambedkar. So but this is very significant article, and you need most of the time you will need reference related to this article. So what is there in these 20 pages? Let us start. It starts with the rise and fall of Hindu woman, who was responsible for it. Before I get into what is there in every paragraph and what we need to study, I would like to read out something from writings of Ambedkar in this, from this article itself, and you will understand what we are going to discuss. So okay, so these two paragraph I will be reading from this article, which is there on page number 122, and for this same article, Babasaheb has actually given more reference in appendix 2, the position of women in Hinduism and Buddhism. That will also two paragraphs which are relevant right now, the topic which I am going to discuss. So let me read out. There can be no doubt that there has been an utter downfall in position of women in India from what it once was. We cannot say much about the part they played in ancient time in statecraft, but there is no doubt that they did occupy a very high position in the intellectual and social life of country. That at one time a woman was entitled in Upanayana, clear from अथर्व वेदा. उपनयन एक संस्कार होता है. उपनयन is a sanskar which is actually for the start of the education. So when a child is getting into education, when we enroll our children for the school, then we go for this Upanayan sanskar. So this is it was after Manu's regime. It was entitled for, this was specifically entitled for the boys. But in Atharva Veda, if you see in Atharva Veda, Ambedkar clearly quote that a woman was entitled Upanayan is clear from Atharva Veda, where a girl is spoken of as being eligible for marriage having finished her brahmacharya. From the Sutra, it is clear that women could repeat the mantras of Vedas, and the women were taught to read the Vedas. Panini's Ashtadhyayi, and the women were taught to read Veda. Panini's Ashtadhyayi bears testimony to the fact that women attended Gurukul, that is colleges for the education, and studied the various shakhas is sections, divisions of the Veda, and became expert in Mimamsa. Mimamsa is generally interpretation of Vedas, where scholarly people used to do Mimamsa. Patanjali's Mahabhashya shows that women were teachers and taught Vedas to girl students. The stories of women entering into public discussion with men on more abstruse subject of religion, philosophy, and metaphysics are by no means few. The story of public disputation between Janak and Sulabha, between Yajnavalk and Gargi, between Yajnavalk and Maitreyi, and between Shankaracharya and Vidyahari shows that Indian women in pre-Manu's time could rise to the highest pinnacle of learning and education. Jo, the way when we talk about our this proud history and ancient history, where we can claim that Indian women had a bright future and they even rose up to the highest level of knowledge and discussion. Here we find the reference in Atharva Veda, Panini's Ashtadhyay, Shrota Shutra, and this Mimamsa. They could actually become expertise in Mimamsa, Patanjali's Mahabhashya, and so many other scholarly women we have read here. That is Gargi, uh, uh, and the discussions which went between Yajnavalk and Gargi, Janak and Shulabha, Yajnavalk and Maitreyi, Shankaracharya and Vidyahari. So these are the women's position before Manu era. At at one time women were highly respected cannot be disputed. Among the Ratins who played so prominent a part in the coronation of the king in ancient king was queen, and only the king elected did homage to queen. He worshipped his other wives of lower caste. In the same way, the king offered salutations after the coronation ceremony to the ladies of the chief of guilds or shrenis, we used to call it. Guild means these are the small divisions of groups. This is very high position for women in any part of the world. Who was responsible for their fall? It was Manu, the lawgiver of Hindus. There can be no other answer to leave no room for doubt. Let me quote some of the laws made by Manu regarding women and are to be found in Manu Smriti. We will come to these readings what Manu says. Before that, in the appendix, which is page number 100, 495 in volume 17 part 2, and this is appendix, the position of women in Hinduism and Buddhism. And let me read out the relevant paragraph here. Both Buddhism and Hinduism and Buddhism have produced great women, and instead of trying to find fault with the customs and teachings of the past and sagas, who proclaimed them in accordance with the need of their time and the capacity of understanding of their hearers, we should strive to emulate those great souls among Indian women whose names have survived many a mighty empire, whose thoughts were higher than statecraft and whose hearts greater than the power of monarch. The figure of Savitri, whose profound love and wisdom vanished even the king of death, will ever stand out as a symbol of the noblest qualities of womanhood. The voice of Maitreyi and Gargi are forever heard in immortal dialogues of the Upanishads, and the songs of the saintly Buddhist sisters will live in the hearts of Indians like the devotional songs of Mirabai and the heroism of Padmini. So these paragraphs clearly shows that how women had highest position in Indian society, and this is what the argument Ambedkar is trying to give, that it never happened that Indian women had lower position compared to men. So let me come to this rise and fall of Hindu women, who was responsible for it. This article was a clarification or a dedication to the legacy of Buddha, and how this whole controversy started. Actually, in January 21, 1950, I repeat, January 21, 1950, there was one magazine, Eve's Weekly. Please note down, Eve's Weekly magazine published an article in January 21, 1950, in which it was written clearly that the downfall of Indian women happened because of Buddha. So when this article came, one very scholarly Lama was there, Lama Govinda. He gave the argument in favor of Buddha. And then after that, when Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar read this article, whole controversy, then he decided to made it more clear. So we are going to discuss those debates here. So I start my point here. In the Journal of Mahabodhi for March 1950, there appeared an article on the position of women in Hinduism and Buddhism by Lama Govinda. His article was a rejoinder to an article which had appeared in Eve's Weekly of January 21, 1950, and in which the Buddha was charged for being the man whose teachings were mainly responsible for the downfall of women in India. Lama Govinda did his duty as every Buddhist must in coming forward to refute the charges. But the matter cannot be allowed to rest there. This is not the first time such a charge is made against the Buddha. It is often made by interested parties who cannot bear his greatness and comes from quarters weightier in authority than the writer and Eve's Weekly can claim. It is therefore necessary to go to the root of the matter and examine the very foundation of this often repeated charges. The charge is so grave and so veiled that the readers of the Mahabodhi will, I am sure, welcome further examination of it. Fortunately, this is a good news for uh, lover of Dr. Ambedkar, that this article, what I'm reading, is a writing by Babasaheb himself. So you can understand what he's writing and how, how beautifully, how argumentatively he's writing. There is no comparison. So such a charge against the Buddha can be supported on two grounds. These, because he is coming for the significant systematic arguments he's giving. Before I start the point, let me come to this appendix 2, the position of women in Hinduism and Buddhism, because this is actually the explanation simultaneously given, so it is very significant for us to read this. So for your reference, I'm just this talking about this. Now let me come to the point. So a rejoinder to an article published in Eve's Weekly on January 21, 1950 under the title Our New Republic. So this article was published under the title Our New Republic. Time is January 21, 1950. Newspaper is Eve's Weekly. Lama Govinda. It is a quote I'm giving you. In India, women were used to statecraft long before they ever did in Europe. The Ramayana and Mahabharata are full of instances of such women. These lines were prominently displayed in an article published in Eve's Weekly on January 21, 1950 under the title Our New Republic. Does the learned author of the article hint at the fact that Draupadi, the chief female character of Mahabharata, was gambled away by her husbands and other husbands because she had five, or that Sita, who had heroically rejected all advances of her capture Ravana, was rewarded with the distrust and doubt in her purity, put to the fire ordeal and banished it to the jungle? If the position of women in those days had been what the writer of the above mentioned article would have us believe, then we wonder why Draupadi had never been given a chance to gamble away her five husbands, or Sita an opportunity to send her culminators and doubters on the pyre or into the woods. It certainly would have been more correct in this connection to say that women of India in those times were used by their statecrafts. As to the women of Europe, I cannot say whether they were lagging behind their sisters in India in this respect, but I am quite sure that when some of them got an opportunity to meddle with statecraft, they were quite quick to make use of it. If Queen Elizabeth had been in the place of Draupadi, she would probably have executed her five husbands as she executed her unfortunate Lord Essex, lover Lord Essex. But in my opinion, Draupadi without statecraft was more lovable woman than Queen Basie with all her political power and cunning. Another figure of European history who might have been mentioned with advantage is Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, who was both a loving mother of many children and able ruler. And if we went to go into the earlier history of Europe, the Empress Theodora of Byzantium is perhaps the most striking example of a woman who rose from the lowest position of that of supreme power. She started as a prostitute and ended as an empress. I do not think that this would be the ideal of Indian womanhood, just I do not think that statecraft adds 1 inch to the dignity of a woman. Even if it were true that in Indian women were used to be statecraft long before they ever did in Europe, out author apparently not able to find any historical verified instances of an earlier period than the Rani of Jhansi and Chand Bibi, who both belong to the most recent epoch of Indian history. But the most astonishing statement of the article under review is that it was, alas, the Buddhist theory that seems to have first thrust women into background. What this theory is has unfortunately not been revealed by the learned author, and though I have scrutinized the Buddhist sacred text and their teachings, I have found no special theory about women, but only about the human species in general. The Four Noble Truths, the formula of dependent origination, and Eightfold Path of Liberation make no distinction between men and women. Here I would like to say you one thing. This is the writings I am reading, written by Lama Govinda. Please note it down. Lama Govinda, when he is refuting the charges of article titled Our New Republic, published in Eve's Weekly, January 21, 1950. So this is what I'm reading from Lama Govinda. All through Buddhist history, it was a special feature of Buddhist society that would have had a far more favorable position than in most non-Buddhist countries. The fundamental equality of man and woman has been the lodestar of Buddhist society from its earliest beginning. Anybody who has lived in Buddhist countries, be it Ceylon, Burma, Siam, Indochina, Tibet, knows that the status of woman is astonishingly high because the Buddhist wife does not look up to her husband as to a god. She is not expected to eat after her husband has finished his meal or to immolate herself after her husband's death as an alternative to a life of utter dejection and privation. On the contrary, she is free to leave her husband if she feels that she cannot live with him, and she does not become a social outcast after her husband's death, but can remarry if she desires so. Women may have their own affair in the fact Burma as well as in Tibet, of which country I can speak of my own experience. Because Lama Govinda was from Burma, so he is saying that I can speak with my own experience. Women are perfect equal of men, socially as well as in respect of business affairs. They often show more enterprise and ability than men, who gladly leave these things to their woman folk. Such a position of women in Buddhist society would hardly have been possible if, as the author of the article under review, the Buddha has a prejudice against women and was forever exhorting men to beware of them. To accuse of the Buddha, who certainly was the most broad minded, most liberal, and tolerant of all great teachers of the past, and who, due to this, was and still is revered far beyond the confines of India as no other of her sons. To accuse such a teacher of prejudice is certainly an extraordinary feat of misjudgment. If so, all the great sages of India was only the Buddha who had a worldwide appeal. It was his complete lack of any prejudice, how otherwise could he be acclaimed and recognized as enlightened one. The universality of his outlook and his deep understanding of human nature, irrespective of caste, color, or sex. It was he, in fact, who laid the foundation for the emancipation of women, who, under the laws of Manu, were in a very unfavorable position. As our learned author admits, this contradicting his own previous statement that Buddhists were the first to thrust women into background. It was the Buddha who declared in unmistakable words that woman has a chance to attain sainthood as a man. This attitude of early Buddhism is confirmed by the fact that Buddha on one occasion refused an invitation from princes because he had already accepted that of the courtesan. Courtesan is a इसको नगर वधु बोलते थे. Uh, so courtesans were the women who used to entertain society during that time. Primarily, these were the women who were not considered to be very respectable and dignified. But once when Buddha was called and invited by a courtesan, he never said no, and he willingly accepted the invitation, and he went and took food ate food in the house of courtesan. The princes were shocked that a frivolous woman like Amrapali should be thus honored by the Buddha, and tried to dissuade him. So Amrapali was the woman who was a Nagar Vadhu, जिसको बोलते थे, courtesan. Amrapali once called him for the food and invited Buddha to her home. Buddha willingly went there and gave a dignity and respect to Amrapali. But the Buddha stuck to his words, and Amrapali became one of his most praised women disciples. If he had harbored any prejudice against women, here would have been the opportunity to show it. That the Buddha was forever exhorting meant to beware of women is one of those hard half truth which misled those who have not taken the trouble to read Buddha's words in their context. So, if you know this article, Our New Republic claim that the Buddha was forever exhorting meant to beware of women. Buddha is consistently saying that beware of women. If this is the fact, then Buddha would have easily denied Amrapali or rejected her invitation, but he didn't do so. The Buddha did not exhort man in this case, but monks who had taken the vow of chastity in conformance with the ancient Indian sannyasi rule accepted by Buddhist and Hindu alike. Nuns were equally exhorted to beware of men. The exhortation of the Buddha was therefore not due to prejudice against women, but due to the knowledge of human weakness in men and women alike. And this is the last article which last two paragraphs which I have already read. How the Hindu woman and Buddhist woman had high position in our history. So there is no question. And this was the article which was written by Lama Govinda in the reply of Eve's Weekly, where the writer of the Eve's Weekly, because we don't know who is the writer of Eve's Weekly, but I mean, who is the this writer of this Our New Republic, the article, and which published in Eve's Weekly. So now the arguments which are being given in this article, that these are the evidences on the basis of that we can prove that Mahatma Buddha was against women, and this is the para which is being quoted from Mahan Parinirvana Sutta, and please note it down. Chapter 5, Mahaparinirvana Sutta. There is a dialogue between Ananda and Mahatma Buddha, and what this dialogue says and how Mahatma Buddha is replying to this. So this is the dialogue which is being taken in a support by the writer of Our New Republic article, which was published in 21st January 1950 in Eve's Weekly newspaper. And this argument is, the first possible ground may be the reply which Buddha is reported in chapter 5 Mahaparinirvana Sutta to have given to a question put to him by Ananda, and it reads as follows. So the dialogue is between Anand and Buddha. The Anand पूछते हैं, Anand ask him, how are we to conduct ourselves? हमें अपने आप को कैसे रखना चाहिए? With regard to womankind, when we are interacting with women, how are we to conduct ourselves? As not seeing them. आनंद बुद्धा कहते हैं कि उनको मत देखो. If we should see them, अगर देखना हो तो what are we to do? क्या करना हो? Not talking to them, हमें उनसे बात नहीं करनी चाहिए. But if they should speak to us, Lord, what are we to do? Keep wide away, दूर रहो. ये this is the dialogue which is being quoted from Mahaparinirvana Sutta chapter 5, a dialogue between Anand and Buddha, in which clearly Buddha is saying that if you need to talk to women, don't talk to them. If you need to interact with them, don't interact with them. And even if you still cannot avoid it, then keep away. So this is what Buddha is replying. Now let us come to the fact. What is this fact about Mahaparinirvana Sutta chapter 5? This Mahaparinirvana Sutta chapter 5 was evidently Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is proving that it is not written by Buddha and it was not during even his lifetime, because the writing of Mahaparinirvana Sutta, the text or the chapters which were included, they were even later 400 till 400 years, the text were the writings were included in that, and mostly after death of Mahatma Buddha, bhikshus were adding these interpolations. So interpolation is later addition, and what is the argument is being given that because Buddha was not there and women was there in the Buddhism. So to keep that sanctity and the virtue of celibacy, these are the later interpolations included by bhikshus, and that is why it has been included in the form of dialogue between Mahatma Buddha and Ananda. So let me come to the further points. There is no denying that the passage in question is to be found. Now this passage which I read right now, it is in to be found Mahaparinirvana Sutta, published by Oxford University Press. The point, however, is not whether the passage existed or not. The point is that if any argument is to be built upon this passage, it is not necessary to prove that the text is original and genuine and not the later interpolation of bhikkhus. So then we have to find out the authenticity of this text, because this is published from Oxford University, and let's find out the authenticity. Anyone who knows the central teachings of Buddha is quite bewildered after reading the Sutta Pitaka, as we find it now wrapped about mythical drapery, disfigured by additions of purely Brahmanic ideas entirely foreign to the original Buddhist thoughts and distorted by the twists and turns given to the monastic ideas intended to enforce monastic life, so much so that one is inclined to join the wonder with Mrs. Rice Davids. Okay, so then the argument further goes. There is therefore nothing very extravagant in the suggestion that this passage is a later interpolation by bhikkhus. In the first place, the Sutta Pitaka was not reduced to writing till 400 years had passed after the death of Buddha. Secondly, the editors who compiled and edited them were monks, and the monks' editors compiled and wrote for a monk. The statement attributed to the Buddha is valuable for a monk to preserve his rule of celibacy, and it is not unlikely for the monk editor to interpolate such a rule. So, what the argument we are trying to understand here is that the text the dialogue which we get into Sutta Pitaka chapter 5 is a later interpolation by Buddhist monks, and why they have given the name or the reference of Buddha, because it was more significant for this monks to direct in a proper way and make it sure that this is what Buddha's teachings are there, because if they put their own name, then maybe their followers would not follow them, they would not take them serious. So that is why the dialogue is written in the name of Buddha and in the discussion form of with Ananda. And there are two other considerations which go to support the suggestion that this passage is a later interpolation. Firstly, from the table given in the introduction to this sutta, to be found on page 72 of Digha Nikaya part 2 in SBB series by Davids, it will be noticed that a great many of the passages which occur in this sutta also occur in other suttas. It is important to note that this passage does not occur in any other sutta, notwithstanding the fact that they contain so many passages from this sutta. So this text, this paragraph which we are talking about, the dialogue between Buddha and Ananda, and where Buddha is denying the interaction with women, is we don't find this interaction or this dialogue anywhere else, because secondly the argument is being given that secondly from the pages 38 of the introduction of the sutta, published volume 11 of the SBE by Davids, it appeared that There exists a Chinese version of this sutta, but this Chinese text also does not contain this particular passage. So this particular passage which we find in Sutta Pitaka, Mahaparinirvana Sutta, chapter 5, we don't find the same text here in Chinese version where this text is there, and in other sutta which is also published by SBB series by Davis, part 2. Let us go further and apply the test of probability. Was there any reason why Ananda should have asked such a question? Was it keeping with the known relations of Buddha with women? There is evidence to show that such a question could not have been asked by Ananda, and that if such a question had been asked, the Buddha could not have given such a reply. The conduct of Ananda and of the Buddha towards women, as reported in the Pitakas, is so contrary to the possibility of such question being raised and as such an answer being given. So when we read Pitakas, which is during Buddha and Ananda's period, we never find that Mahatma Buddha is actually talking any such kind of interaction where he is denying to talk to women and to keep women in a subordinate position. So we don't find here. So this is clear that this reference which is being given in Mahaparinirvana Sutta chapter 5, a dialogue between Ananda and Buddha, is later interpolation by monks to maintain the discipline and celibacy in the monkhood. Then on the point as to whether there was any necessity of Ananda to ask such a question, it is relevant to note that in the same chapter of Mahaparinirvana Sutta, only a few gathas removed from those quoted above, the Buddha described how sweet was Ananda and how he was loved by all. Out of them, I quote below the two following gathas. So there are a number of gathas associated with Ananda, and through these two examples, we could come to know that how Ananda was loved by even women monks and his men brethren also. Brethren, there are these four wonderful and marvelous qualities in Ananda. So these are the qualities we are going to know about Ananda. If brethren, a number of the brethren of the older should come to visit Ananda, they are filled with joy on beholding him. And if Ananda should then preach the truth to them, they are filled with joy at the discourse. While the company of brethren is ill at ease, brethren where Ananda is silent. So if when Ananda is meeting to the elderly monks and they feel so happy, and when they are discussing, interacting with Ananda, they feel so high spirited. But if Ananda keeps silent, then they feel the brethren is ill at ease, brethren when Ananda is silent. If brethren, a number of sisters of the order or the devotee man or of the devotee woman should behold him, and if Ananda should then preach the truth to behold them, they are filled with joy and at the discourse, while the company of sister is ill at ease, brethren when Ananda is silent. So when Ananda is interacting with women, they are filled with joy and they listen the discourse so happily, and they are very eager to know the truth from Ananda. But if Ananda doesn't speak and he is silent, then sisters feel ill and at unease. So this is how the loving relationship between Ananda and his brethren monks and sister monks are there. From this it is clear that it was usual for Ananda to meet women, not only sister but devoted women who were not members of the order. He used to see them, meet them and talk to them. Why then should Ananda have asked such a question? The Buddha knew that the woman used to meet Ananda. He raised no objection before. Why should he have a thought of interdicting the forbidding all contact with women? The whole passage is so unnatural that it must be regarded as a later monastic interpolation. So the fact is clear before you. There is another instance in the life of Ananda, and we all know that during Buddha included women in ascetic life. Buddha gave a woman even opportunity to attain moksha, and Buddha was so equal that he never discriminated men to women. So that's through his writings through his dialogues, through his evidence, and even the literature which is available in different countries. For example, Chinese literature, the same interpretations we are able to read and find there. There is another instances in the life of Ananda which stand in stark contrast with the passage in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta. As is well known, in the first Sangiti Council, 5 complaints were made against Ananda. They are, so when the first Sangiti happened, then during that there are some issues came, and some of them were against Ananda. So what are the issues which came against Ananda? The first issue, let me read out. It is actually an issue at the number 3, but let me read out first. That he caused the body of the departed soul Lord to be saluted first by women, so that it was soiled by the tears. When Buddha got parinirvana, then Ananda allowed his women folk, his sisters, and his women monks to see Buddha's body first. And this is the complaint which has come in the first council, that why did he allow women to see Mahatma Buddha's parinirvana body see first. The first complaint is that he failed to ask which part of the Vinaya were, in the opinion of the Buddha, the lesser part of the which he gave authority to Sangha to alter the amends. That second is that he stepped on the robe of Lord during retreat when sewing it. Third, I have already read, that I repeat again, that he caused the body of the departed Lord to be saluted first by women, so that it was soiled by their tears. The fourth complaint was that he did not ask the Lord to live for a cycle. And fifth is that he was principally instrumental in getting women admitting to the Sangha. So these complaint number 3 and complaint number 5, where he instrumentally in getting women admitting in Sangha, Ananda did this, and Ananda allowed women to see Lord Buddha's parinirvana body. So these are the complaint which has come in the first council, and these are evidentical that he was never against women. He always respected and gave dignity to women. To all these charges, Ananda pleaded guilty. Whether he should have pleaded guilty or not is another matter. What is of interest is the third charge, for it has great relevance to the issue in the question. Why did Ananda allow women to touch the body of Master if the advice given by him, as mentioned in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, is true as fact? Would he so flagrantly and knowingly disobeyed the advice given by Buddha a few minutes before? The answer must be in the negative. What follows from this negative answer? What follows is that the Buddha had not given such an advice as is alleged against him. For if he had given such an advice, Ananda could not have acted contrary to it. If it therefore stand to reason that no such advice had been given by Buddha. So we have come to know the fact that in the Parinirvana Sutta, chapter 5, what is being dialogue is being mentioned in Eve's weekly article, Our New Republic, published in January 21, 1950, is wrong. Let us now consider the question from the side of the Buddha. Would it have been natural for Buddha to give such a reply? The answer to this question must depend upon Buddha's course of conduct towards women. Did the Buddha avoid meeting women as to suggested by the advice he is reported to have given to Ananda? Where are these facts? Two examples at one come to mind. One is that of the Vishakha. She was one of the 80 chief disciples of the Buddha. Now please note this fact carefully, very seriously. She was Vishakha. She was one of the 80 chief disciples of the Buddha with the title of Chief of Alms Givers. Did not Vishakha at one time go to hear Buddha's preach? Did she not enter his monastery? Did the Buddha act towards Vishakha in the manner he directed Ananda to act towards women? Did the Buddha Bhikkhu, what did the Bhikkhu present at the meeting do? Did they leave the meeting? So another example is Vishakha was one of the 80 chief disciple of Buddha, and it is clear that she was given the title even Chief of Alms Givers. So it shows that Buddha is interacting with Vishakha and she is being given honored. She is being honored. So it is very evidentical that Mahatma Buddha is interacting with women monk and women preachers comfortably. The second instance that come to one's mind is that of the Amrapali of Vaishali. We all know the story of Amrapali of Vaishali. She was known as Nagarvadu or a courtesan. She went to see Buddha and gave him and his monks an invitation for meal at her house. She was courtesan. She was the most beautiful woman in Vaishali. वो वैशाली की बहुत खूबसूरत महिला थी. Did the Buddha and bhikkhus avoid her? On the other hand, they accepted the invitation, rejecting the invitation of Lichavis who felt quite insulted on that account and went to her home and partook of her food. So वैशाली ने जब उन्हें आम्रपाली ने जब उन्हें बुलाया, वैशाली की जो सबसे खूबसूरत महिला थी जो कि नगर वधू थी और नगर वधू का दर्जा समाज में इतना अच्छा नहीं होता है, और उसी वक्त महात्मा बुद्ध के पास लिच्छवी जो कि वहाँ के राजा थे उनका भी इनविटेशन था, लेकिन महात्मा बुद्ध लिच्छवी के इनविटेशन को मना करके आम्रपाली के यहाँ गए एंड he took his disciples there. So this statement is so significant. I read it again. The second instance that come to one's mind is that of Amrapali of Vaishali. She went to see Buddha and gave him and his monks an invitation for a meal at her house. She was courtesan. She was the most beautiful woman in Vaishali. Did the Buddha and the bhikkhus avoid her? On the other hand, they accepted the invitation, rejecting the invitation of the Lichavis who felt quite insulted on that account and went to her home and partook of her food. So Buddha went there and he took food there in the house of Vaishali. There are another example Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is giving in support of Mahatma Buddha, that how he was respectful and dignified for the woman. On other example are not wanting. The Nanda Kovada Sutta tells of Prajapati Gautami having brought 500 armed women with her to Buddha when he was staying at Shravasti with the request that he should instruct them in the doctrine and discipline. Did the Buddha run away from them? Or that this evidence is so amazing. Prajapati Gautami brought 500 women to getting the doctrine and disciple of Buddha, and they were all women, and Mahatma Buddha actually gave them learning and inducted in his religious fold. The Samyukta Nikaya reported that Kokanada, the daughter of Pajuna, when the night was for spent shedding radiant with her effluent beauty over the whole Mahavana, came into the presence of Buddha when he was staying at Vaishali. So, some Samyukta Nikaya report that Kokanada, a daughter of Pajuna, when the night was far spent shedding radiant with her effluent beauty over the whole Mahavana, came into the presence of Buddha when he was staying in Vaishali. The report of frequent visit of Queen Malika, wife of King Prasenajit, to the Buddha for religious instructions are scattered in the Pitakas. So, the introduction we come to know is Prajapati Gautami bringing 500 women for the learning and teaching to Buddha, all his women, her woman folk. Then this Kokanada, who also came in the fold of Mahatma Buddha, and Queen Malika, who was the wife of King Prasenajit, she most of the time interacted Mahatma Buddha. From these instances, it is clear that the Buddha did not shun women, and women were not afraid of going to Buddha. It is true that Buddha did advise the bhikkhu not to make it a habit to visit families of lay disciple for fear of human weakness yielding to frequent contact with women, but did not forbid such visits, nor did he express any disdain women as such. So, okay. So, these are the instances we are counting. It is also true that Buddha was dreadfully keen in maintaining celibacy. He was painfully aware of the fact that, to use his own words, women don't stay in life of celibacy. But what did he advise? Did he advise bhikkhus to shun all contact with women? Not at all. He never put any such interdict. Far from doing any such thing, what he did was to tell the bhikkhus that whenever they met any woman, do ye call mother mind. So mother mind, sister mind, and daughter mind. And this is what teachings he gave, that no need to keep women away. But when you are meeting any woman, there are three kinds of mind you have to keep. When you see a woman, you see whether she's a mother mind. I mean, keep in your mind that she is a mother, and if she is a sister, and she is a daughter. So whenever bhikkhus are interacting with women, they have to keep women in three category of their mind: mother mind, sister mind, daughter mind. If a mother is elder, if a woman is elderly, call her mother. If she is of equal of your age, call her sister. If she is younger, then call her sister. तो औरत को आप तीन तरह से देख सकते हैं, एक माँ के रूप में, एक बहन के रूप में, और एक बेटी के रूप में. तो उसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. और आपको जिस तरह मनु ने कहा है औरतों से भागना चाहिए, औरतों का तिरिया चरित्र होता है, ऐसा बुद्ध ने कभी नहीं कहा. The second possible ground which an opponent of the Buddha can reply upon in support of the accusation is that opposition of the Buddha to women joining Sangha and in making the Bhikkhunis Sangha, when he ultimately allowed it subordinate to Bhikkhu Sangha. Here again the further analysis of the situation is necessary. Why did the Buddha oppose the demand of Mahaprajapati to take Parivrajya ordinance? Did he oppose it because he was of the opinion that women were low class whose admission would lower the status of Sangha in public esteem, or did he oppose it because he was of the opinion that women intellectually and morally were incapable of realizing the ideal of his doctrine and his discipline?